3 weeks before your 59th birthday, you are in the break room, checking your retirement balance when Tyler walks by, still talking about the truck payment, still working the same hours he worked at 30. You used to feel behind him. Today, for the first time, you do not. Here's what nobody tells you. Every year you keep punching a clock after this age might be a year you were never required to give away. I call it the borrowed years. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how many of yours you can take back. Stay with me, because the number that changed for you in that break room has a name, and once you understand it, you will never look at your own calendar or your own job the same way again. Let's start with the rule most people never get explained to them properly. Before 59 and a half, pulling money out of a traditional IRA or a 401k costs you a 10% penalty on top of whatever income tax you already owe. There are a handful of exceptions, but for almost everyone, that account is sealed. The day you turn 59 and a half, the penalty disappears. You still owe income tax on the traditional side, but the lock is gone. That single date is the moment your retirement accounts stop being frozen and start being tools. This is the first borrowed year most people never claim back, because nobody ever tells them the vault is already open. The real opportunity isn't draining the account the day the lock clicks. It's designing how the money comes out, and when, so it works with your taxes instead of against them, instead of waiting for the government to force your hand later with required withdrawals. There's also a narrower door that opens earlier for some people, built around leaving your job in the year you turn 55, which can give partial access to that specific employer's plan. It's real, but it's a narrower door than the one that swings all the way open at 59 and a half, and it only applies to certain workplace accounts, not to an IRA you rolled money into. If this is already making you rethink your own timeline, a like helps this reach someone else, staring at the same statement tonight. Here's the mindset shift that quietly changes everything. Your income, while you're working, is rigid. The same amount, taxed the same way, every 2 weeks, for decades. Your income after 59 and a half does not have to look anything like that. You get to choose how much comes in, which account it comes from, and how that mix lands on your tax return. Picture 3 doors in front of you. One is labeled taxed later. That's your 401k and traditional IRA. One is labeled taxed never. That's your Roth. One is labeled already taxed. That's your regular savings and brokerage account. After 59 and a half, you decide how far to open each door every single year. That decision is the accounting nobody teaches you in your 20s, because in your 20s there's nothing to decide yet. For a lot of people, the stretch between 59 and a half and 65, before Medicare and often before claiming Social Security, turns out to be the lowest tax bracket they will ever sit in again. That window is not an accident. It's the best few years you'll get to move money quietly between those 3 doors, without the IRS taking a bigger cut than it has to. In practice, this can look like drawing a little from the taxed later door to cover groceries and the mortgage, pulling nothing from the taxed never door because you're saving that growth for later in life, and letting the already taxed door fill in whatever gap is left. Blend it differently next year if your bracket changes. That flexibility is the entire point, and it simply does not exist while you're still collecting one rigid paycheck. Now here's why that window has a hard edge to it, and why it matters more than most people realize. Under the newest set of federal retirement rules, the Secure Act 2.0, the age you're forced to start taking required withdrawals from most retirement accounts moved up to 73, and for anyone born in 1960 or later, it moves again to 75, starting in the early 2030s. If you're in your early 60s right now, that could mean 10 to 15 years between 59 and a half, and the day the government finally forces your hand. Every year inside that stretch, where you move money out on your own terms, whether that's a partial Roth conversion or a withdrawal that fills up a lower bracket on purpose, is a year you're shrinking the size of the withdrawal the IRS will eventually force on you. And a bigger forced withdrawal later does 3 things you don't want. It pushes you into a higher bracket in your 70s and 80s. It can trigger higher Medicare premiums through income surcharges, and it strips away your flexibility right when you have the least energy to deal with paperwork. Keep working full-time straight through this window without a plan, and you're not playing it safe. You're quietly handing extra money to the IRS and to Medicare later when you're too tired to notice. If you're not subscribed yet, now's a good time. New videos on exactly this kind of thing every week. There are two mistakes I see undo this window over and over. The first is treating 59.5 like a green light to empty the taxed later door as fast as possible, which just drags you into a higher bracket this year instead of spreading it out over many lower ones. The second is doing nothing at all, coasting on autopilot until the government's forced withdrawal age arrives and makes every decision for you at the worst possible moment, when the account has grown even larger and the tax bill grows with it. The window rewards a middle path. Small, deliberate moves, repeated every year, beat both extremes. Most people assume more years working automatically means more safety. It doesn't always work that way. Stay full-time deep into your 60s, and you might actually lose your cheapest years to convert money to a Roth or draw down a taxed later account before the forced withdrawals begin. There's also a cost that never shows up on any spreadsheet. Every extra year you give to a job you don't need anymore is a year you're not as healthy, as mobile, or as energetic as you are right now. People who've already crossed this line will tell you the version of them at 61 could take the long trip, climb the trail with the grandkids, take on the big house project. The version of them at 75, even with more money saved, often can't do those same things the same way. So the real question was never, can I squeeze out a few more dollars by staying longer? It's what you are trading your healthiest years for, and whether that trade is one you're actually choosing, or just one nobody ever asked you to reconsider. The number one fear that stops people from stepping back before 65 is health insurance, and it's a real one. If you leave full-time work in your early 60s and buy coverage through the marketplace, average premiums for someone your age have been running somewhere around $1,100 a month per person before any subsidy. A couple in their early 60s might see quotes closer to $2,000 a month before credits, depending on income and location. But once you turn 65 and move on to Medicare, healthcare costs don't disappear either. Some of the biggest studies on this put a typical couple retiring today needing well into 6 figures set aside for healthcare alone across the rest of their lives. Here's the part that changes the math. When you lower your taxable income between 59.5 and 65, you can actually shrink those marketplace premiums through income-based subsidies and open up more room to convert money to a Roth without climbing into a higher bracket. There's a threshold in how those subsidies are calculated, and crossing it by even a small amount of extra income can shrink the subsidy by more than the extra income was worth, which is exactly why this has to be planned with real numbers instead of guessed at in your head. Health insurance was never the reason you can't step back. It's a cost that has to be built into the plan, the same as any other line item. If you want us to walk through a situation closer to your own, drop the details in the comments. People ask me constantly how they'll know when they have enough. They expect the answer to be one clean number, 1 million, 2 million, 25 times their yearly spending. Rules like that can be a decent starting point, but they were built decades ago on conservative assumptions and spending that never changes year to year, and real life spends differently than a spreadsheet does. Some years you'll spend more traveling, some years less because you're staying close to home, and a plan that can flex with that is worth more than a single number pulled from a study. Enough was never about the size of the account. It's about the clarity of the income plan behind it. Once you know your real spending, your tax brackets, your withdrawal order, and your Social Security timing, you stop guessing. A couple with $1.5 million and an actual plan will sleep better than a couple with $4 million and no plan at all. Clarity is what turns the fear into freedom, and it's usually the moment people realize they don't need to keep grinding the way they have been. So let's turn this into something you can actually walk through this week. Step 1. Know your real number. Pull the last 6 to 12 months of statements and separate what you truly need: housing, food, insurance, utilities, from what you want: travel, gifts, hobbies. You cannot decide if you need to keep working until you know what your life actually costs. Step 2. Map your 3 doors. Lay out your accounts into what you'll spend in the next 1 to 3 years, what's invested more conservatively for the next 4 to 10, and what stays in growth for 10 years or more. A lot of people use this age to consolidate old accounts from past jobs into fewer places, so the whole picture is visible at once. Step 3. Use the window on purpose. Look at the years between 59 and a half and your forced withdrawal age as your personal tax design window. Ask what bracket you'd land in if you scaled back. Ask how much you could convert to a Roth each year and stay comfortable. Step 4. Decide your work style, not just your exit date. Stepping back doesn't have to mean going from full-time to nothing overnight. Some people go part-time, some consult, some just drop the parts of the job they never liked. The real question is how much income you would actually need from your investments to cover the difference, and for most people, that number is smaller than they expect. Step 5. Clean up anything expensive. Use this stretch to clear high-interest debt and decide how you honestly feel about the mortgage, paid off or not. Step 6. Coordinate Social Security with the rest of it. Every year you delay claiming between 62 and full retirement age adds roughly 5 to 6% to your monthly benefit, and delaying past that to 70 can add close to 8% a year on top. If there's a spouse involved, coordinate both timelines together, because the higher earner delaying often protects the lower earner for the rest of their life too, not just for the years you're both around. Step 7. Design what you're actually stepping into. Where you'll live, what fills your days, what keeps you useful and connected. Finances support that picture, they don't replace it. And skipping this step is why some people get the money right and still feel lost 6 months in. The money was never the point. It was always just what buys you the room to build that. James was 61, and for 3 years straight he told Margaret the same thing. Just 1 more year, and I'll feel safe. Margaret finally sat him down, and they ran exactly what we just walked through. They found their real spending number. They mapped their 3 doors. They looked at the window between 59 and a half and James's forced withdrawal age, with real numbers instead of guesses. What they found surprised both of them. They didn't need James's full salary anymore. A modest withdrawal from the traditional side, kept low enough to stay in a comfortable bracket. A small Roth conversion each year. Marketplace coverage that got cheaper once his income dropped. And Margaret's part-time work covered the difference completely. James stepped back from full-time at 62 instead of 65, and he'll tell you now he wishes he'd run the numbers 3 years earlier. The difference in how he felt at 62 compared to how he expected to feel at 65 was bigger than either of them predicted. He still consults a few hours a month, mostly because he wants to, not because the plan needs him to. And Margaret says he's easier to be around now that Sunday nights don't come with a knot in his stomach about Monday. If this is helping you see 59 and a half differently, send it to someone close to that age. It might save them a few years they didn't need to give away. The point was never that 59 and a half means you should quit tomorrow. It's that once you actually understand what that age unlocks, penalty-free access, a real tax window, income that finally bends instead of staying rigid, you may find you don't want to keep working the way you have been. So here's the question. Tonight, before you go to bed, if you stepped back from full-time at 59 and a half or 60, exactly how much would you need from your own accounts to live the life you actually want? Not the life anyone else is showing you, yours. If you don't have that number yet, that's the whole plan, right there, waiting to be built. If videos like this are part of how you're planning your own exit, subscribing keeps them coming, new ones every week. Go back to that break room for a second. Tyler is still talking about the truck payment. You're not behind him anymore. You never were.